I'm invincible. I'm paying money. The girl's happy. She's got no money. I got my rocks off. Oh, how good is this?
Hello everyone and welcome to Bound for Glory, the only AFL show on SYN. Massive episode this week. We got a game last night, just absolutely incredible between Hawthorn and Geelong. But first we're to introduce the panel. I'm Ethan Meldrum.
I'm Ben Kasubi.
I'm Matt Marsden.
I'm Peter Williams.
I'm Damon Jackman.
But the game last night, it was just absolutely incredible, wasn't it? It's the game of the year. I think
Did you guys have pants on by the end of it? That was
probably
insane.
Not.
And I was ready. Pre-game, I was like, yep, zip, I'm going to get ready. First quarter, I zipped them back up, and I thought, this is going to be pretty boring.
I wasn't even...
Half-time, they were gone.
I didn't even get to watch the game fully, but when I got home, I walked in the door without pants on. So
you didn't get to watch all of it?
I was ready.
Pre-de-pantsed.
Unfortunately, no. I came home just in time to watch the end.
Where were you? What was more important than Hawthorn playing Geelong?
I don't want to offend my friend, but I was out watching a stupid play, which is alright. But yeah, hopefully, yeah.
Well, I tell you what, there was an even better play on at the MCG, filled with drama and every emotion under the sun.
Where do we start? First quarter,
How about
I guess.
The start?
Yeah, all right, okay, yeah, it's a good part. Look, first quarter, it was a 45-point lead at one stage. 51 point. Okay, yeah, nice stats, me.
I'm out facting you, Matt.
Okay, don't know. Fact war next week. Ash Craven. No.
Put it away.
Next, all right, later on. Yeah, all right. First quarter. It was just incredible to watch. I mean, everyone expected to be this close contest, and even when that big lead got out from Geelong, no one expected it. But at the same time, everybody knew that it would come back to be a close game.
Hawthorn, their defence didn't want to know pressure in the first quarter. Geelong didn't give them any time or space. Their forwards played in front. When Stevie J kicked that opening goal, you just thought they were away.
10 touches, 2 goals first quarter, Stevie J. Best quarter he's played all year, and that's saying something.
I mean, even Oren Stephenson lifted. He had 8 touches, 4 clearances in the first quarter. He dominated. Even Hawthorn's pressure around the stoppage, Geelong got numbers to the ball.
That says more about David Hale than it says Oren Stephenson.
And Jared Ruffhead as well, but he played well last night. Paul Chapman as well in the first quarter. How many goals did he kick?
3 in the first quarter.
Yeah. It was a great start from him.
I think the thing with Hawthorn, Suckling, Young, Birchall and Smith and Burgoyne, they just didn't get enough of the ball. They got no supply, no space. They're their ball users. They can kick the ball to targets, and they just didn't find that time and space.
Burgoyne and Sewell were very prominent in their comeback, but again, when the going got tough, they sort of disappeared.
Well, that's quite ironic because of the Hawthorn supporters who first quarter were nowhere to be seen on any social media forum or anything. Then halfway through the game, they suddenly came out from somewhere.
I think they were too busy throwing their phones.
Fastening the nooses.
They suddenly disappeared at the end. So
I think, to be fair to Hawthorn, they had absolutely no right to come back and hit the front at the end.
Yeah.
No right whatsoever. Lesser teams would have died down, fallen over and just given up. Birchall got into the game in the second quarter. When he ran backwards with the ball, breaking lines backwards, and then laid an epic tackle. That was sensational.
One thing I remember from Birchall's game, and it was in defence, and he took the ball and he ran through about 2 Geelong defenders, running to the opposition's goal, then turned around and got the clearing kick. That was probably the best moment of the game.
By a mile, I think.
He went Super Saiyan, didn't he?
He lost the play. He started glowing orange. I think... Also, a factor in Geelong sort of slowing down the second quarter. Stevie J wasn't getting enough to the contest and wasn't winning his own ball. Chapman went off after that hit from Guerra, who I think is going to be gone for maybe 2-3 weeks.
Guerra, and was Shields the other one that got reported? Yeah, he'll be gone.
That was dumb by Shields.
Yeah.
He played a great game on Bartel, but that was dumb.
Guerra's obviously overtaking Campbell Brown's mantle there at Hawthorn.
A question, Luke Hodge went off as a sub again. It was only his second game back from injury. Was that a good decision? I know obviously they need to prepare him for the long term, but they could have won, honestly, if they kept him on. They really had a big chance to win, and he's one of those key players that just his presence is enough to lift players.
Well, I think we were discussing this before the show, when Sam Mitchell went off with the blood rule with about 2 minutes to go in the game. They really lacked leadership on the field, and Geelong got it away easily. And I think, that played a part, but then again, he's coming back from a 3-month knee injury. it's a big thing to come back from, and I think it was pre-planned, precautionary, and you never know, the extra 30 minutes could have potentially seen him re-injure his knee.
I think the point you make with no leadership on the field, Hawthorn sort of played that last minute and a half as if they were losing. They didn't, take time. They just lost their cool. They played on when they shouldn't have. Especially Sewell, I think, when he won that free kick, the holding the ball about 68. He should have just composed himself, take 20 seconds off the clock.
They were complete shambles up forward. Like, what was Piopolo thinking when the ball bounced his way? He could have grabbed it easily and tried to at least run around the player or kick it behind.
I don't think that was Puopolo's brain fade. I think his brain fade was about 20 minutes earlier when he was 10 metres out from goal and just missed an absolute sitter. With Sewell, he should have just taken his time, maybe just bombed it to the pocket. If they didn't win the ball, they could at least, force a boundary throw in.
With Roughhead and Hale, and also Gunston and Bruce circling around there, it's a lethal forward line. They know if Hawthorn can just kick it long, Roughhead can take a mark, Bruce can just snap a goal from nowhere, as can Rioli. Anything could happen, and I would have thought it'd be the smart option to do, but obviously not what Sewell thinks.
No, look, he's a bit of a whipping boy, but Ryan Shellmakers was very bad for the last three quarters last night. Here's a big stat. 6 goals to Hawkins, obviously. Hawkins had... where is it? I've lost this stat. 5 marks. He had 5 marks. And I think about 3 or 4 of them were contested, and Shellmakers had 2 marks for the entire game. I mean, Shellmakers had 6 disposals, Hawkins had 6 goals.
Yeah, I think, another 2 clutch players for the Hawks who I think were down on their usual, output. Whitecross and Lewis, they folded under pressure last night. They're running under 50% disposal efficiency. They cracked, and I think they're very important for the Hawks to hit targets, to find space, and Geelong just didn't allow that.
Now, Hawthorn have obviously had a very good season, but the thing is, in their losses, they expose so much about themselves, and they show that if you can put pressure on their defence, on their big tools, you're going to win. And if you look at all of their losses this year, it's happened.
Sydney proved that.
You've even said that here in the paper today. Hawthorn have now lost all 5 games this season when it has recorded a kicking efficiency fewer than 67%. That tells very, very much, and I'm sure a lot of opposition coaches with teams inside the 8 are, watch and dissect, the games that they have lost. The way, a side like Sydney are very good at applying pressure, and I think the Hawks actually have to go up to the SCG in a couple of weeks. It'll be interesting how they combat that.
If there's a final in Sydney, you'd put... you'd think that would be obvious for Sydney to win. Yeah.
And what's interesting is one thing that I definitely liked last night was Geelong using pods as sort of a bit of a distraction, getting Gibson away. Because that's how Schoenmakers, they all carried on about how well Schoenmakers have been playing, but let's face it, it's really Gibson playing that third man up.
Schoenmakers looked like a boy next
Get
to a
him
man.
one-on-one with anyone,
one-on-one,
really. Get him one-on-one with bloody, I don't know, Jared Blair or someone, he'd probably be outmarked. So, really, I mean... Gibson's the man, so you take him away, and yeah. And
how was Selwood's performance in the last probably 3 minutes of the game? I reckon that was awesome. Hawkins was the match winner, but Selwood getting the clearance in defence and then the mark in the centre as well after knocking himself out was pretty awesome.
He knocked himself out, and then he got back up and laid a tackle.
He's a Terminator.
He's a warrior.
Yeah.
No, I think even more importantly, Hawkins. The end is that. Have you guys seen a better ending to a game of football? How long has it been since you've seen
that slow motion of Hawkins when the ball was travelling towards goal? Can
we think of a better game in, say, since 2000? I mean, Essendon Kangas.
Since 2000, the West Coast Sydney West Coast Grand Final.
Yeah, the Grand Final.
The 1.1 was up there.
But there aren't too many.
Yeah, that could be its own topic.
Maybe St Kilda Geelong. 2009 Gardner's mark.
Yeah. I personally liked the prelim last year. That
was actually a very good game of football.
It was.
It was as far as talking points go, I think that's probably one of the biggest we've had. I mean, one team was leading by 51 points at one stage, and then they were down in the last quarter, and then they ended up winning.
It was almost as if it was scripted. To be honest. Yeah.
It followed the usual script of Geelong Hawthorn games. Geelong would get out of the blocks, Hawthorn would reel them back in, then take a lead, and then Geelong at the end somehow find a way to win.
It's sort of funny. About 80-90% of people would have tipped Hawthorn, but nobody was certain. And it's really weird to be in that situation.
Except Robert Walls, obviously.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, I read that Friday morning, I'm just like, oh, Wolsey, they're going to
Was
win
that
now.
Wolsey said, what was it? He said that
He
Geelong
said
wouldn't get
Geelong-
within 5 goals.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a David King. He's gone off way too early. Text us in with your thoughts on
Thoughts? North Melbourne.
North 0427 767 767.
Speaking of which, we've got a couple here from Strawn's side. First one, if I didn't know better, I'd swear that Tom Hawkins won Olympic gold last night, which is a fair call. And another one for you, Ben. Hawthorn lose to Geelong on Friday night. They will not win a flag, which is a call you made. Do you stand by this?
Do I stand by that? I think they've been found out, as the stats said, that if they are held up with that sort of pressure, and finals is a different breed of football. You're not going to find time and space. If Hawthorn are to win the flag, they need to go back and learn how to play contested football because they were smashed.
And what's interesting is, as we've sort of spoken about, if Hawthorn finish third and, say, play Sydney or Adelaide away from home, that's going to be a battle, and then they could meet Geelong in that second week.
Considering Adelaide and the Swans are two very good contested football sides, that's an uphill battle for Hawthorn, but they obviously need to go back. They've got the players to do and play that sort of contested style. They just need to be more proactive on the field and sort of apply it game day.
Just imagine that, Hawthorn Geelong in a semi-final.
Jeez. It's difficult, though, this season, because usually you look at one or two teams and you say, okay, they have a lot more reasons why they can win a premiership rather than why they can't. You look at the top 5 and you think of more reasons why they can't win a premiership rather than why they can.
Yeah, I don't think anyone deserves it this year, to be honest.
yeah, just give it to Gold Coast. Fremantle, they need.
Give it to Ablett.
Yeah, Ablett.
Give it to
every medal.
Done. Oh well, look, it's an interesting season. I mean, everybody sort of expected Hawthorn to win without expecting it, if that makes any sense. And they didn't, so that's another spanner thrown in the works. Geelong, I think they've cemented their spot in the finals.
Lucky for
now.
the Hawks, they can go play Port down in Tassie next week, and they can, go back to basics and just learn how to play football again. A contested
your
style.
standard 100-point win.
Yeah.
Well, I haven't heard, but have any
They'll need
Hawthorn
it.
supporters been complaining about the sizzle ravioli?
Oh, dear.
Delicious. He's tackled in.
There was
up in the
about a
forward line.
minute 20 left on the clock, I think, and Geelong were running out with the ball. I mean, the guy only had the ball for about half a second and he was tackled.
Well, let's go around the panel. Do we think it's holding the ball?
God, no.
Not unless Rioli punching the ball out of his hands is counted as holding the ball. So
The umpire made a very good call then.
It's not, but considering the consistency that's been paid this season, who knows?
The big one for me is, I think Brad Sewell won the free kick and he played on with it. In fact, I think somebody else won the free kick and he played on with it. And they were up by, I think, 3 points at that stage.
Yeah, take up points, sadly.
And he decided he'd play on with it and get himself under pressure. I mean, they got that led to Puopolo's stupid bicycle kick attempt at goal of the year.
And this wasn't a sort of Suckling or someone like that who played on who could kick at 55.
Yeah.
Sewell had no hope of going for goal.
Suckling had an average night last night.
Yeah.
You could tell they didn't get that penetration through Geelong's, because they really pushed up the ground and made Hawthorn earn every mark and didn't allow them to play on.
Well, he had one play on the wing where he broke 2 tackles at the same time.
That was sensational.
Which was incredible.
The last quarter, when you could see they had one hit the post, they had one just miss. They kept on getting these almost goals, and when you saw that, you sort of expected Geelong would go kick a goal, just because, again, as you said, Ethan, it seems scripted, which is crazy.
Much.
And that Puopolo, I'm sorry, I will never get over that. The fact that the ball went over, he had about 5 metres in space and decided to go for a bicycle kick.
You don't go for
Stevie Milne?
goal of the year.
Yeah, no,
Was it
it was
Stevie
worse
Milne,
than
mate?
Stevie
No,
Milne.
that was much.
definitely
I think that was much worse. I mean,
It was within his
it set
reach.
up for him.
Yeah.
It set up for him, and it's like,
Yeah,
okay, I'm gonna be a hero.
I'll still contend that his snap from about 10 metres out was worse.
Yeah.
That he had.
He kicked the wrong end of the ball.
Yeah,
he kept it in play for Geelong. He switched it for Geelong. That's what he did.
Do you think Clarkson will sort of come out and say, look, it's not his fault, we're not going to blame him, but then behind closed doors go, you idiot.
I think
no,
a few of
I
them
think so.
will look at each other and say, you lost this here, we lost this here, sort of thing.
How was
honestly.
Clarko in the last minute? He stood up the entire time, and he was.
Oh, yeah.
He went to the back. He was running around the box like.
I think he was eyeing off the wall at one
Yeah.
To
stage.
be fair, I wasn't expecting a wall to be broken. I was expecting a stand to be demolished, to be honest.
Stadium flip.
Just jump out of the coach's
The
box
usual.
into the crowd.
Top
kick
11.
it
We had a
anymore.
top 11 ready to go before last night, and then we thought, look, we're scrapping
Matt
it.
was
but-
trying to do the segue, but we can't ruin it.
No, look, yeah, I can't.
I think the game totally destroyed the show this morning. We've
No,
had
it
to
did,
change
yeah,
everything.
completely. We had a top 11, nice subject ready to go, and then Puopolo Barlow tried that stupid attempt. I could put it down to him. So you know what? This week's top 11 better decisions than Paul Puopolo's goal attempt. Here we go. Number 11, Robert Walls' call on Geelong, as we alluded to before, saying that Geelong weren't getting within 5 goals. You look like a muppet, Wallsy. Number 10, drafting Mitch Thorpe over Joel Selwood. Well done. Nice effort. Obviously, Joel Selwood's not going that good. Cough, cough. Well done. Number 9, partying with Alan Didak. Brilliant. Number 8, streaking and running up to Andrew Simons, of all cricket players. That's got to be my favourite cricket moment ever, when the streaker ran on the field and got completely hip and shouldered, put on his ass. Beautiful viewing. Number 7, naming your child Sharad. Shame. Shame on you. I mean, Collingwood have some bad ones. They have Steele and Sharad and a few other that
and two variants of Dane as well.
Yeah. It's not good. I think they have worse. I don't know whether they have worse names or worse tattoos.
I'm sorry, Corby's daughter, Mercedes?
Yeah,
Mercedes. You don't name your kid after a car, I'm sorry.
Number 6, kicking to Justin Westhoff. Ever. Don't do it.
You'd know from
experience.
No, don't.
No, we're not going there. We're not going there.
We can't mention
Number 5, accepting pills from Daniel Connors. That's a career ender, that is. Number 4, making Lance Whitnell your captain. He was captain of Carlton for a season. People forget that. That's embarrassing.
It's up there with Brad Green.
Oh, yeah. That's some good captain. Oh, we need to make a best 22 worst captains.
Oh, we're just laying the boots in this morning.
Number 3, Terry Wallace's Twitter name, the list manager. Irony. Okay, the only thing you managed was a wooden spoon.
What was that argument I got into?
Oh yeah, no, we have to mention that Ben Kazupi got into a little verbal stoush with Mr. Terry Wallace about
He pretty much condoned tanking. He's like, I'd rather pick 5 over pick 8. I'm just like, wouldn't you rather confidence in your team, a few wins under the belt?
He knows how to work his picks, obviously. Number 2, Brock Mclean moving to Carlton to avoid tanking. Good choice. Maybe the biggest tankers in the last decade.
It's like jumping out of a burning boat straight into like an ocean full of sharks.
Yeah, pretty much. Number 1, always good one, drafting Zach Dawson 3 times. He's been drafted 3 times. He got picked up by Hawthorn, he got pre-season selected by the Saints, and he got selected by Fremantle. People forget that. He got drafted 3 times. That's like, picking up the same potato and saying this is the worst potato of the bunch, and then picking it up again and then saying it again, then picking it up again and saying, no, this is still a bad potato. He's playing this week as well. How does he get a game?
And if you want to text in, that's 04 27 767 767, and I think we'll go to some SYN messages.
Do you want drama? Do you want intrigue? Do you want conversations about the scariest part of a pony, or if it's creepy to wink at people? Then you want the Prop Showsel. Every week, Ben and Vicky will be proposing, well, just about anything. Maybe it's a way to save the world. Maybe it's marriage. Or perhaps even just a simple toast. But whatever it is, you can be sure you do not want to miss it. Listen to it live on SYN, Saturday mornings at 11, or at propshowsel.com.
Sergei Stepanov is a Moldovan musician and member of the Sunstroke Project, which shot to fame in 2010 after appearing at the 55th annual Eurovision Song Contest. He's known for his eccentric dancing style and absolute ownage of the alto saxophone. But who is he better known as? Here's a hint. For more pop culture trivia, tune into Brain Juice, Saturdays from 3 to 4 to hear 2 contestants battling it out in an epic encounter of pop culture wisdom, only on SYN Radio.
We are back on Bound for Glory now. We got a big segment over a fairly prominent issue during the week on Brock Mclean's comments on the couch, footy talk show on Fox Footy. When he was asked about why he left Melbourne, he was noted as a future captain of Melbourne, and he decided that he wasn't going to spend any time at the club anymore. Decided he wanted to go to Carlton. And he revealed that it was, it wasn't, well, he didn't say it was because of tanking, but he said, look,
everything but.
He essentially said everything but tanking. He said, look, circumstances that happened in the second half of the year that never really sat well with me. They don't call it tanking, they call it experimenting. I think he'd have to be blind Freddy not to figure that out. Big comments. He's going to be investigated by Brett Clothier, the AFL integrity manager.
They have one of those, what?
Investigated in inverted commas.
It's funny.
He must have the easiest job in the world.
But they're going to have a formal interview of it. And what the interview is going to be about is very interesting because we know that the AFL is not really... Well, Andrew Dimitriou doesn't think tanking exists until... he's on EMT next week, isn't he?
Yeah, we saw a snippet of the interview on AFL 360 on Thursday night, and he admitted that they shouldn't be as dismissive of the claims that they have been in the past.
Well, he shouldn't.
Well, he shouldn't, and the entire organisation shouldn't.
Everybody
and that
knows
totally shuts down Adrian Anderson's remarks on, we've investigated it, but we've found nothing. It's happened. You can't deny that.
Everybody knows that tanking's occurred, except for the people that need to admit it the most.
Well, now we've had Brock Mclean, we've had John Meeson came out and said, look, there was a few funny positional changes. Nathan Brown said it felt a bit odd lining up on Paul Johnson with a couple of minutes to go in Richmond versus Melbourne, that infamous game where Melbourne had James Frawley, Matthew Warnock as defenders lining up forward, Brad Miller in the ruck. It was fairly odd, to say the least. And Paul Gardner, former Melbourne president, I can't remember exactly what he said, but he said something along the lines of it was a bit odd to somewhat back it up, alongside Dean Bailey saying that draft picks were somewhat what we were looking for. So fairly odd, I think overall. Well, they're going to investigate it. They're definitely going to investigate it. It's just... Well, what do we think is going to happen? Do they think Melbourne are going to be cracked down upon by the AFL? Do they think
they should take Scully away from him. Oh, wait. But it is ironic, though, they actually did lose him after they tanked for that draft pick.
Well, they tanked for
at least Carlton tank effectively.
Yeah. Well, what are they going to do? Do what they did with Melbourne Storm and strip them of wooden spoons? I mean, they can't strip them of premierships. So, not in the last 50 years.
But what do you do? I don't think Melbourne deserve to have a draft pick taken off them. You got to someone.
I don't think there's anything you can do now. I think it's so long ago that, and there was a complete, the people that were there at back in 2008, they're not there now, so you can't punish the current.
David Schwartz said there still were people at the club who were involved with the.
I'm sure there are still some, but not everybody.
Not everybody, of course.
I'd like an investigation of Schwab personally, because the interview McLean did, he insinuated that it was out of Bailey's control, that he was doing things against
apparently
his will.
did come from above.
It's really funny in that Brock Mclean's interview, he mentions that the team may have tanked, and they slap McLean on the wrist rather than investigate the tanking further. The initial reaction was to beat up McLean and say, no, you can't say this. Why not say, okay, you've said this, let's look into this even more?
I sort of picture like a Men in Black thing where they have that little light that come in, knock on McLean's house.
Done.
So
beautiful.
Yeah, to think that the AFL just might say to McLean, we don't want you talking about those sort of things in public, or we rather, you not discuss it. That's completely head in the sand stuff. And, we're at, the AFL, if it wants to progress, I can't remember a time that since probably the mid-90s in which the AFL administration has had such a poor opinion, public opinion, and...
It's match fixing.
Behind closed doors, they'd know. They'd know that tanking goes on.
And one thing I did finally agree with Robbo on during the week, which is very rare, so we better keep noting this.
Our best friend.
Basically what he'd said is, if people are getting fined for betting on matches, say $10 bets or something like that, then what do you do about match fixing? That should be major.
Well, that's a whole other topic in itself, is match fixing. But
well, I think we need to identify what the 5 aspects of tanking is. I mean, it's at the selection table, taking players, sending them for surgery early, or general soreness.
That happened with Collingwood in 05, didn't it, Pete?
We were down to 25 players, so
I don't think Collingwood...
We didn't tank. We were out of players.
Bad.
I'm completely of the belief that players don't tank ever. Players don't play to lose. It's completely behind. It's as was mentioned. Brad Green was played in the ruck. Brad Miller. Sorry.
Brad Green the ruck.
2 key defenders, Warnock and Frawley, were played forward. They'll still be playing, they'll be played in those positions. They'll still try to do the best that they can in those positions. But when you set your team up in a situation where it simply cannot win, that's tanking. Players never play to lose.
Yeah, that's another point. Positioning, moves mid-match that make absolutely no sense whatsoever. Who was playing in the ruck that day, the Richmond game?
What, for Melbourne?
Yeah, for Melbourne. There was someone absurd playing in the ruck.
Brad Miller.
Yeah, it was.
And
mentioned this.
Spencer also played.
Sully. Late news.
Yeah, Spencer
had 26. I know he had 26 hit-outs that game. So
there were no tags. Yeah, and they were I think Davey kicked 3 goals and they took him off the ground.
Well, Melbourne
reward him by sending him off the ground.
Melbourne St Kilda late in the
Scully.
season as well. Liam Jarrah kicked 2 quick goals to get Melbourne back into the game because it was actually a fairly close game, and they benched him for apparently a whole quarter.
Well, that's like that Freo game against Adelaide, where Adelaide kicked like 130 to like 12, and that Freo guy was the only one, Ryan Murphy. He was the only one who kicked a goal, got dropped the next week. So they kicked 1 goal 6 or something.
That was. They had 13 points or something stupidly.
Wasn't there also a game down in Tassie against the Hawks where they dropped 9 players?
Round 21
and
in
then,
2010, I believe, and they dropped some of their all their best players.
And then they
finals.
played the Hawks in the first final, and they ended up beating them by 5 goals over there in Perth. We can't have that happening. Yeah. And if the AFL want to keep sticking their head in the sand, and it's good to see Andrew Demetrio acknowledging it, whether they're going to act on it, that's another thing entirely.
I'd gain a lot of respect if they came out and said, okay, we think tanking might exist and do something about it. I mean, the years of them saying that it doesn't occur wouldn't matter so long as they fix it now and make it not happen in the future.
How do you fix it?
It's a tough question, but
I think you got to have a set penalty.
Yeah,
for anyone who's got enough, any team that has enough evidence against it.
If you tank for picks, you think the best option would be to take the picks away.
See, the problem is it's so hard to sort of specify whether a team is tanking or whether they're just playing crap.
But,
the thing. Sorry, mate.
No, so if you look in, as again with the Melbourne Richmond game, if you see that these silly decisions are being made to move players out of position and benching the players that are playing well, that's blatant tanking. You can just tell.
Yeah.
I think even looking at someone was looking at the Dogs' ins and outs, and I'll read them out, and it's sort of odd. And I'm not saying
there's a bit of general soreness.
There's a lot of, from not just the Bulldogs, a lot of teams, you could have a best 22 of general soreness players just from out this week.
Stad.
Here are the changes for the Western Bulldogs. Out, Gilby. He's been, in and out of the team, injured. I'll give you that.
But he's a senior player.
Cross is a legitimate injury.
Cross is an injury. There's Premi, Jones, Dalhouse, all soreness. The ins are Addison, Sherman, Skinner, Campbell, and the new kid, Johannesson. They're not tanking, but you can't tell me they're trying to put a winning side on the park. Now they'll probably win because I said that. But we're going to see this.
They're playing North Melbourne, which is a game they won a few
I think they'd have a full-on crack and just put as many senior players in the team as possible, because I think they're a real chance today.
My favourite one was the favourite injury for this season was the game with Carlton where they had Cruiser out with a hamstring, and then all of a sudden, a day later, when I think it was Warnock that pulled out, suddenly he was back from the hamstring injury. So it must have been the easiest hamstring ever.
Nothing sus.
It really gives more of a context to the GWS Port game and the Melbourne Gold Coast game tomorrow, because we'll be watching that game for the wrong reasons. Because towards the end of the season, we're going to start having a lot of these games. With 18 teams, there's going to be less games up for stakes, and teams are going to try not to win. That's
when you're not in finals contention, I mean, the teams are just going to.
There's no point.
Yeah, why even go out to win? Because the whole point of playing AFL is winning a premiership. If you're not in contention,
the thing is, you can give games to kids, and if you can play them in positions and give them confidence, you can go into the new year with something new.
That's the mentality that promotes tanking, though. To say, oh well, we can't make finals, let's not win. I'd say if you can't make finals, you want to go out there and say, all right, we got nothing to lose, let's roll the dice, let's try and get a few scalps and prove that next year we can beat these teams.
And on the opposite scale of taking, one team I have liked, bar last week when they got smashed, was Brisbane, because they've obviously had a few injuries and they could have given up long ago. Yeah, they've always given it a crack. I mean, last week's obviously one of the toughest ones you can do over in Perth.
You don't go over
But,
Perth.
I mean, they've given it a crack the whole year. They upset West Coast in the Gabba, and they've won most of their home games there.
I think the last 2 years, that's something that the Lions have always been. They've been competitive in their losses, and that'll pay dividends. I think Brisbane are a really good chance to play finals next year if they really get. They've got some talent up there.
Something else I'd like to note: another game, the Cruiser Cup in 2007 as well. Just on the positioning and tags, which you noted, Ben. Travis Johnson and Heath Scotland that game racked up about 82 disposals or something crazy between them. They were each other's opponents, like not direct, obviously, but I think it was both teams just trying to lose that game by just letting players run free, and it's quite weird to be fair. But do we think there should be a penalty, like a set penalty?
There should be a penalty, but what it is still unclear.
What are your thoughts on the tanking issue? Text us in on 0427 767 767. It's free.
It's free.
And
free.
speaking of which, we've got a few here. We've got one from Joe, one of our panellists. This week's top 11 goal, Joe in Florida. So a big shout out to Joe there. And Strawn side, the usual. Will Brock Mclean now leave Carlton and go to the Indonesian badminton team?
Did everybody see that game? Did anybody see that game? That was beautiful.
Yeah.
And they both got disqualified, which is great.
My favourite part is they were tanking so they wouldn't have to play the US in a certain semi-final. What if the US made the final anyway?
Yep.
But it was the other Chinese.
They didn't plan that far ahead.
The Chinese also did it so they wouldn't play each other to go for gold and silver. That was the Chinese got disqualified because they would have to, if they won, play the other Chinese team, and therefore they'd wouldn't make the final.
Yeah, why wouldn't the country want a gold and silver medal?
Yeah. And last text from Strawn side again. It's like proving price collusion for the petrol companies regarding tanking.
Well, obviously it's a big issue everywhere. We've just got to crack down. It's not good for the sport. I think we better go to some sim messages. We'll be back after this.
No one would have believed in the first years of the 21st century that human affairs were being watched by Panorama. Human affairs by young people, for young people. 4 to 5 p.m. Monday to Friday on SYN.
Looking for a fun excursion?
SYN offers exciting radio tours for schools, community groups and more.
Learn about community radio and get hands-on producing your own podcast show in the SYN studios.
Are you a student? Tell your teacher about SYN. If you're a teacher, go to syn.org.au/education or email training@syn.org.au.
That's syn.org.au/education or email training@syn.org.au.
Catch yourself up with the latest in sport, plus all the latest from London with SYN's new limited edition sports show, The Daily Gauntlet. Starts Monday, July 30 and continues weekdays at 4:30 p.m. straight after Panorama, right here on SYN.
We're back on Bound for Glory now. Matt, I think you've got a big issue regarding the interstate contenders for the premiership.
Again, I sort of mentioned it before. You look at the top 4 or 5, and there's a lot more reasons why they can't win a premiership rather than why they can. And starting with West Coast, sort of after stamping their position as a serious contender earlier in the year, their run with injuries sort of took its toll, and they were managing it well for most of them. We were commending them for how well they were going with their injuries, but it's really taken them down a ladder a little bit. Although they'll most likely finish inside the top 4, their chances of a home final are starting to slim. Their last 8 or so weeks have just been really interesting. I mean, last week they smashed Brisbane by 98 points. The week before they lost by 49 points to Adelaide. Lost to Sydney by 52 points. Obviously, those two are the ladder leaders at the moment. They beat North by 2 points, defeated Gold Coast by 126, lost to Collingwood by 3 points.
That was a good game, though.
And defeated Carlton by 10 points. But if you look at it, they've lost to, the other top 5 teams that are with them. They beat Hawthorn by 5 points. So that's credit to them. That really isn't
38 points kicked.
I think the first goal was kicked in late in the second quarter or something like that. So that was, you could sort of put a question mark on that. They lost to Collingwood by 3 points, and they got belted by both Sydney and Adelaide. So you look at it and you think, look, West Coast are a good team, but are they good against the other teams? That same goes for all the other teams in the top 5 as well. I mean, Collingwood have lost a few important games. Sydney lost to Adelaide earlier in the year. It's very confusing, honestly, and as I keep mentioning, there's more reasons why the teams won't win a premiership rather than why they will.
Well, it could probably, as it does most years, come down to whoever's got the fittest team in the best form in grand final week.
I think, that brings us back to Sydney and Adelaide, because they've had these relatively soft draws, and it's great, obviously, because you get propelled up the ladder, but when you're challenged against someone who seriously wants to beat you, you don't know how to win because you've grown so used to be. I mean, I'm not saying that they've only played bad teams or that they've had an completely easy one. They still need to, you can only beat the team that's put in front of you. But when you play these teams consistently and you adapt to, maybe playing a lower level of team, when you come up against somebody that's of great quality, you struggle.
And I was just going to say, Adelaide play Gold Coast, was it, in the last round, I think you said?
Yeah, they do.
And to me, I would rather play, maybe not a top team, but like a middle-of-the-range team, just to sort of keep yourself running. I'd hate to play Gold Coast in the last round.
I think there's that side, but I also think, considering how close it is this season, they're going to need the percentage, so I don't expect them to rest players. I expect them to have a fair crack.
Yep.
Is one of those top 5 teams or top 4 teams now, I guess you could sort of say Collingwood won't be up there, but are any of them standout, genuine contenders for the premiership? Usually by this time of the year, we look at them and we say, okay, well, this team will win or that team will win, but you look at the top 4 and you don't look at them and say they're going to be the premier.
Look at the last few years, like most of the time around this stage, apart from like Geelong in 2007, the one who we've said they're going to win the premiership for the last few years hasn't been the case. Like 2008, Geelong were certainties. 2009, St Kilda were looking so good. 2010 was just a line ball. 2011 was
the team that finishes second as opposed to the minor premiers.
Yeah, it has been the last.
2010 was supposed to be Geelong again, but then they crashed out the prelim.
Yeah, so
I think just looking at West Coast team sheet today, there are 5 blokes in that team today that I don't think are best 22 for the Eagles. You've got Brown at fullback. That's Glass's position. Yep. You've got Shepherd. He's still a kid. He's played all right for his first season. Okay.
Second or third.
Second or third. Oh, jeez.
Yeah, he was a top pick in 09, I think.
Yeah, he's played okay, but I don't think he's in their best team considering the midfield depth of West Coast. Then you've got Josh Hill. I think Lacroix would take his spot. Then you've got... True. There's that many injuries at West Coast. You just seem to forget how deep they can bat.
You've got to keep in mind that they're obviously, you say they're contenders because they're in the top 4 this year, but next year they're going to get back Lacroix, they're going to get back Kennedy. With Darling and Hill at the moment, you sort of look at their forward line, you think, God, this could be bad for everybody that they play.
I always felt if Collingwood and West Coast had their full lists in, they would be probably 1 and 2 right now. I would say Sydney probably 3, Hawthorn probably 4th.
I think from this point on, this week, Collingwood have their best team in. They've had all year. They're only missing, to me, Ball and Cracker from their best team. You could argue Brown, but he's sort of been omitted mainly because of team balance. But that's 3 most that we've got out.
What about McCaffrey? Do you think... And Johnson? I reckon Johnson's very important for Collingwood.
Like, both of them are sort of line ball. Johnson, yes.
I would have Johnson in just for experience.
But so we're missing no more than about 4, maybe 5. But it's the best team so far. So from this week on, we'll see how we go.
Well, their draw's interesting too. West Coast, they got Freo this week, which is very line ball. We'll get to that in the previews. Geelong at Patterson's, which could be interesting. You never know what Geelong will bring. Port at Amy, interstate. You'd think they'd win that one though. Collingwood at Patterson's. Collingwood are fantastic interstate, and then they have Hawthorn at the MCG, which is probably a loss.
Jeez, that's a tough run.
It's probably the toughest run home.
Top 4 is not. If they win some of those games, then they deserve probably top 4 more than anyone.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with that.
In a way that the 3rd, 4th and 5th are relatively lucky because the team in 6th is that far away or have a hard draw. You'd think that they'd comfortably be the top 5 team.
Geelong are now level on points with West Coast.
But Geelong have a very tough draw.
Pete, just on McCaffrey, Cracker, Johnson, they're back in the VFL this week.
Not Johnson. The other 2, McCaffrey and Cracker are playing. So's Didak. I forgot about him. He's also in that side.
Everybody.
I don't think he's getting back in the team. Didak.
So well, those 3 are all playing.
Fasolo's got his place. Sewn up.
Didak will be off to the World Cup soon.
Yeah. All those guys are still playing in the VFL.
Can they get back in the team? They get 3 weeks of good VFL football. They run games out. Do you think that they can come back and play finals?
Yeah, Cracker probably could.
McCaffrey, I wouldn't think so.
Yeah, McCaffrey was so good in 2010, then injuries just wrecked his year. We probably would have lost that first grand final if he hadn't have played. So he kicked 3 goals in that first grand final. I think he was one of our best. So he was quite impressive. But yeah, it just depends now how it goes.
On Collingwood, we've stopped talking about their forward line. but I think we need to bring it up because tonight St Kilda have a very undermanned defence. It's time for Cloak and Dawes to start hitting their straps.
We'll get to it. I was going to mention it in the previews. We'll get to it, but Dawes, for me, is still the most important player in Collingwood's forward line because the way he performs can determine whether they win or lose games, and it's a lot of the time it's determined why they've lost.
I think also with Cloak usually leads up the ground, and he takes the space, all the players with him, marks the ball, wheels around on the right, and Dawes is usually one out on his man. So that's obviously been very important for Collingwood. But I think we'll go to some sim messages, and we'll be back right after this.
Brain juice tip number 4. Never trust your host. All right, here we go. This is question number 6. Going to fill in the blank here. An apple a day keeps the doctor away. Ah, no, it doesn't. That's stupid. You have to go to checkups. I'm not going to allow that one. Ah, that was a trick question. Brain juice, Saturdays from 3 to 4. Beware the evil quizmaster. Warning. Brain juice may cause spontaneous singing.
Positively can do all the things that make us laugh and cry.
Colin tossed salads and scrambled eggs. What a wonderful kind of day.
You're on sin.
Wow, that was well done. We should sample that and use that more often.
Yeah, I know. That's just going to be the promo for this show. Brain juice, Saturdays from 3 to 4.
Can't get enough of epic sax guy? Listen to Europop and more on Around the World in 80 Songs, Tuesday mornings from 9 till 10, only on SYN.
We're back on Band for Glory. Before we get to the previews, you probably should text us in 0427 767 767 regarding the issue with West Coast. Free, of course. But now the previews. Doggies versus North Melbourne at Etihad Stadium today, 1:45. Going to be an interesting game, I think. Doggies have been fairly shocking form recently, but they did topple North Melbourne earlier in the season. Ben, what are your thoughts?
Well, they toppled North Melbourne because they absolutely destroyed them in the midfield. Losing Cross is a massive out for the Dogs today. I think they had something like 50 more contested possessions than North. They had 11 more clearances. They were obliterated. Swallow was tagged. Wells did nothing. You know, North Melbourne, and Brad Scott said yesterday in his press conference that, you know, they're once bitten, twice shy. They really need to come out today, and if they, deserve finals, this is the game they have to win.
It's funny how times change. I mean, the Bulldogs beat North Melbourne, and now you couldn't even consider the Bulldogs to be a chance today. I mean, really, you'd think about 95% of people would have tipped North Melbourne to win comfortably.
There's still no certainties, because North Melbourne have... In this phase of development, there's 3-4 bad games a season they're going to play. Like, awful games. They'll lose more than, obviously, 3 and 4, but they'll have 3 or 4 awful games. Obviously, North Melbourne fans will hope that today's not it. If they've consistently, in the last 6-7 weeks, beaten teams around them and a few teams above them, they need to put the foot down today and say, yes, we are top 8 contenders. They've got 3... insanely hard games in the next 3 weeks. They play Essendon, Collingwood and the Dockers all at Etihad. They need to win today and by a fair margin. I think.
If they do, they're going to leapfrog Essendon, which will be quite interesting. They're only less than 3% behind them, so a reasonable win today will see them jump past Essendon.
What do you guys think?
I think Robbie Tarrant will be the key player for this game because it'll be Lake on Petrie and everybody will be looking at Lake on Petrie. But who's going to take Tarrant? Tarrant's proven. I think he kicked 6 last week.
Is lined up on it?
No. I mean,
Williams will go for it.
Tarrant's been very good recently in the last month or so. He's been relatively good form. I think he may be.
And then there's Addison on Hansen, which is a complete mismatch. But I think I can agree with you, Ben, on the North need the percentage to leapfrog Essendon. Doggies have lost 8 of their last 9, mostly by fair margins.
North by plenty.
I think
North by plenty.
To tip the Dogs, so North by plenty.
Yeah, I reckon North by 5 goals.
Yep, North.
And I think North will win. And if they do, then they're actually going to be, and providing West Coast beat Freo, they're going to be 2 games inside the 8, which is very important.
Please.
I think they've set up the final spot. I think with Geelong.
No.
Essendon, I reckon, are going to drop out. That's just one doozy.
The game we'll all be watching for the wrong reasons. GWS Port Adelaide at Skoda Stadium.
Oh, it's going to be awful.
Wow.
I don't know. See, I don't know whether it's going to be really bad or really good. I'm sort of torn. I think that GWS, it's Sheedy's 1,000th game as well. I think that needs a mention.
That's a huge milestone.
Like, what was interesting last week, I thought I was really impressed with them last week because they just ran. They're one of those teams that just doesn't care. GWS.
No, that's
keep running, keep going, keep trying. They ran out of legs.
That's what Sheedy does. That's what he sort of says. Okay, guys,
Yeah.
we're going to lose this season. They knew they were going to get belted this season. They're probably going to win the wooden spoon. What Sheedy's done is he said, all right, completely, who cares about the scoreboard? Just don't focus on what your opponent's doing. Focus on what you're doing and do better every week.
It's a very Essendon 2000 mentality. Just focus on your own game.
And Jeremy Cameron is going to be one of the best forwards in the league.
Actually,
for GWS.
Bound for Glory news article is going to be put up later today on Jeremy Cameron, so look out for that.
Yeah,
is that regarding his contract status?
No, that's regarding him being a superstar.
But big ins for both sides, I think. Dean Brogan, Adam Kennedy, Buntine, Caniglia, Corns coming back for GWS, so handy ins versus their outs. And then Schultz and Hartlett for Port Adelaide.
I would have, honestly, I would have maybe tipped GWS if Schultz wasn't coming in, but I think Schultz is...
I don't think they can man up.
He's very underrated, honestly. When he's been playing, he's been very good.
And Pete, who did you say that Pendlebury was coaching last week?
Adam Treloar is what he said. Basically, he told him where to run and where to move, everything like that. So it was quite interesting. I don't think anyone really cared apart from Rodney Eade. But basically, yeah, he just told him where to run. So that was a free lesson for him. Obviously, you wouldn't want it against, say, a team that's close to you, but when you're sort of 10 goals up, 12 goals up, I don't think it really matters.
37 disposals to 402 and a Rising Star nomination, but I'm going to tip Port Adelaide.
Yeah, go with the power.
I've gone with Port, but I'm not certain. I think there's the door's still open.
Yeah, Port will win.
Yeah, I think Port should win this one.
Freo West Coast, the derby over in the West. Very important game, by the sounds of it, with the segment you discussed earlier, Matt. Freo looking okay with Mundy hitting form, Barlow as well, and Nat Fife
is the big one.
He was fantastic
Mac
last
the
week.
Fife.
Yeah. Look, Glass out. That's the big one for me. The fact that
Rosa as well. That's
that's it. So they've got a great ball winner out, a guy that can shut down players in Rosa's out, and they're one of the best defenders in the competition. The fact that Fremantle have one of the informed key forwards in the competition, and West Coast are going in without their best defender.
It's going to have to be Pavlich on Mackenzie, which then opens the doors for someone like Chris Mayne to kick a few.
Who does Crowley tag, Pritis or Kerr?
Pritis, because he can win more ball.
He's damaging, inside.
And the interesting thing is, I think this game rests on Pavlich's shoulders, because if he can get out of off the chain and kick 6 or 7, then Freo are a real chance. So
there's rumours that somebody's going to be a late omission for West Coast today.
Cox, Kerr. Well, Cox was injured last week, wasn't he?
Yeah, he came back on. He was all right. He looked okay. There's question marks over Cox, Shuey, and Kerr. So just keep an eye on that.
I reckon you'd lean towards Freo. That's huge.
I'd say if you're not planning on watching this game, change your plans. Watch it. It'll be a very good game of football. With that said, I've tipped Fremantle because the fact that there's a key forward up one end that's in form and no real big key defender, I think that sort of says it all.
The derby never meets expectations, I think you can say. West Coast are favourites, but I'm going to tip Freo as well.
If Cox, Shuey and Kerr play, West Coast, if one of them goes out, I think Freo will do it.
With the loss of Glass, and if they lose one of those key players, I think they're going to be up against it. But I've tipped West Coast, but wouldn't write off Freo.
Collingwood St Kilda MCG 7:40 game tonight.
Yeah, Collingwood, they're in a funny patch of form. Aside from last week, which is sort of a training run, they've been average. The Saints, they are, I reckon, off the last couple of weeks, I reckon they can put their hand up to say, okay, we just need probably one more big win and we deserve to play finals.
I'd be happy to say that last week for the Saints against the Bulldogs, that was one of the most average, ordinary 70-point wins that I've seen. Like, they won comfortably and they were always up comfortably, but they were sort of playing a team that wasn't really interested.
I wouldn't say interested, they didn't have a forward line.
That's true.
I think the key to this match is Brendan Goddard. Last week he was told to take on Matthew Boyd as his direct opponent. Dominated, 33 disposals, best on ground, I think you'd have to say. Whether he plays well, I think St Kilda can win off the back of a good performance from him.
And interesting enough, from the two matches, like last night's and the Collingwood-St Kilda game, that's the last 4 grand finalists playing off. So 2008 onwards, it's the 4 teams that have made the grand finals. So
You'd think
this week, good round.
you'd think Fisher would go to Cloak, and that'll obviously be an important matchup. I wouldn't mind, honestly, I wouldn't mind seeing Cloak kick a few goals this week after he got a bag against obviously a poor team, but I think that'll really help his confidence, just knowing that he can take a mark and that he can kick a goal.
In saying that, Fisher is a very, very good defender.
But that also opens the door for doors. That's funny. Because who's going to take him? I mean, if he can if he can get into a one-on-one situation, you'd almost back him.
Well, you'd have to. I think St Kilda, Collingwood would have to move the ball really fast and not let St Kilda set up and get an extra person to the contest to come over the top.
Expect Goldsack to kick goals as well.
Yeah, well, Goldsack's the one you actually want lining up now, and that's the sad thing. He came from like a key medium defender, and he's the one you want to be lining up because he's more chance of kicking them. So
the last few times they've played, Collingwood's won comfortably, I think. So I'm going to tip Collingwood by a lot.
Yeah, I think Collingwood by about 5 goals.
Yeah. St Kilda.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm going Collingwood. So, and
oh yeah, Collingwood. Sorry, just curious.
Brisbane, Richmond. Interesting game, given Richmond are the favourites for this one, which makes absolutely no sense.
$1.70 favourites. I can't believe that.
Brisbane
can't believe
at home. They've been going all right, as Pete pointed out earlier.
Again, they beat West Coast up there. They're always competitive in front of a home crowd.
Last week was a classic Brad Scott aberration. That wasn't. It's hard to go over there with an average side with some, missing some players. Some blokes out of form. They're a talented side, the Lions. I like Golby. I like Adcock. They've got some talent coming through. I think they'll push for finals next year. It's over, obviously, for this year. But I think I don't know why they're not favourites.
I think Alex Rance faces a massive challenge this week. He was very good last week against Carlton, except for in the last quarter, and that was sort of when Carlton ran over the top. And he's playing. He'll be most likely take Jonathan Brown. So, to come back from that close loss, it's a big character test for him to play on a key forward this week.
But I think at home you're going to have to tip Brisbane, though.
Yeah. Brisbane.
Richmond up in the last minute and Brisbane will win it.
It'll happen
again.
It'll happen again.
Oh, no.
With Richmond's mentality, I think they'd want to go out and win to prove to themselves that they can actually win in clutch matches. But, yeah, Brisbane.
Melbourne Gold Coast, who cares?
Yeah, just draw.
Yeah,
draw.
The one interesting fact is my uni Monash, which runs an international students program, they go to a game each year, and they chose Melbourne Gold Coast, and I'm kind of like, are they trying to turn them off footy? Or
Dear God.
But I'll go Melbourne.
Yeah, I think Melbourne. I mean, they dominated GWS earlier in the year. You've got to keep that in mind.
Jones to dominate, Green to kick a few goals, Melbourne.
Carlton, the Swans, Eddie had. I think this will be an interesting game.
There's a lot of sort of line ball games. Carlton actually beat Sydney twice last year. Got to keep that in mind.
But Sydney do okay at Etihad. I mean, they're shocking at the G.
But last time they played Sydney at Etihad, Carlton were up by 70 points at one stage.
Cruiser was best on ground as well.
Yeah. Carlton have a pretty good inside midfield. They'll be missing Robinson today. As you said, they're probably better at Etihad because there's less space. And, their inside mids, like Kennedy and McGlynn, they like that. They can keep it in tight. They can't let the opponent off the leash.
I think we could agree that Sydney should win, but look, again, more blind faith. I'm going Carlton.
Sydney have won their last 8 games.
Yeah. Got to lose sometime.
Yeah, I've tipped Carlton.
He's right.
So,
Matt's right. It's one of those years that when you're due for a loss, it's going to happen. I think
it throws a bit of a spanner in the works. I think
Sydney by a goal, nothing in it.
Sydney in a close one.
Jared Waite back if he can get through the pre-game warm up.
Well.
Yeah, Simpson's a big intro. Adelaide, Essendon, last game, twilight game over in Amy Stadium.
Game of the round, I reckon.
3 weeks ago, that was an excellent matchup. 3-4 weeks ago, then Essendon have sort of fallen off.
I'd go 8 weeks ago.
Yeah, they haven't been good for a while. They've dropped off.
They haven't been good for 2 months.
You can tell how well Essendon are going on Bomber Thompson's reactions. Because if he shows them, it's the real coach. I'm sure Essendon fans out there are loving us saying that.
Very interested to see how Gumbleton and Hurley will work together. I don't think they've ever played together before. So
no, I wouldn't say so either.
Yeah, but, that doesn't happen often.
But Essendon aren't in good form. We all know that. Adelaide are. And at home, I think you have to tip Adelaide.
Now you got to look at Adelaide's forward line and you think, no.
If the Crows get on a roll, as you've seen, teams against Essendon the last couple of weeks, Geelong and Hawthorn, and even St Kilda, if you get enough of a lead, you should win in a fairly big margin.
Is Scott Thompson a Brownlow contender?
Oh, yeah. God,
absolutely.
Yeah. Massive.
Because a lot of people wrote him off a few weeks ago.
Watson's probably not going to get the votes that he should because of players from other teams performing
Compare the
pretty
draw.
well. Yeah.
Adelaide's got an easier draw. more chance of beating Goats.
Well, Watson versus Thompson could be an interesting matchup.
Oh, it'd be a huge matchup.
All right, I'm going Adelaide. Anyway.
Yep, Adelaide.
Yeah, I think we can agree on that. But that's the end of the show this week. Got some plugs now.
Yeah, follow Sarge Supercoach on Twitter.
Knows his stuff.
It's coming around to the finals. I think you should get those handy tips. Follow us on Twitter, Bound for Glory FM, and on Facebook,
Bound for Glory Radio, I think. Facebook.com/Bound for Glory Radio.
And our news site, Bound for Glory News.
BoundForGloryNews.com. Best AFL opinion news site out there.
Ever.
All right,
in history of the world.
Ever.
Ever.
I think we'll stress that. All right.
Text.
So,
Have we
got any text?
We'll check out the text.
Last one from Sean's side. What about the team in 8th spot that won't lose another home and away game? He's just asking the question, who won't?
So that's North.
No, they'll lose one.
No, I think
they'll make sure of it.
I think top 8's still open. Fremantle will probably. I think Essendon will slide out and Fremantle will pop in.
All right. Well, that ends our show. So have a great weekend and hopefully
enjoy your footy.
We'll be back next week. Same time, same news.
No worries.
See
you later.
I'm invincible. I'm paying money. The girl's happy. She's got no money. I got my rocks off. Oh, how good is this?